Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show, the podcast version, our first episode right out of the gate. And who better to join us on our first episode right out of the gate than the Prince of Twitter, Andrew Malcolm at @Malcolm. And he's also at RedState.com. He's now the sage of RedState. I think.
Prince of Twitter and sage of RedState. Boy, that's a high calling.
Well, Andrew, I got to come up with something new. It's a podcast. We got to come up with something new. So, just add on to it, right?
Right. Sure. Why not?
Why not? So, lots of things to discuss today. Andrew and I usually talk about media coverage. We talk about politics. We talk a lot about Joe Biden, and his latest column is about the hidden new danger in Joe Biden's reign of error. And I laughed when I read the headline, and I know it got actually a nice reaction on Twitter. The reign of error part got a nice reaction on Twitter, Andrew.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's what it is. He's making errors right and left. And what struck me recently was we're talking about COVID and it becoming endemic, just like the flu is. There's always something of it around and so on. And I thought, you know what? That's what's happening to many of the way we think about Joe Biden is that we're getting, I think, frighteningly accustomed to his gaffes, his stupidities, his incoherences, his misspeaking, his lies, and it's too fast for me becoming, oh, there we go, there's Uncle Joe, crazy Uncle Joe. And to me, that's just not acceptable. I mean, the guy has access to the nuclear launch codes, so this is not the crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving table ranting about something every November.
Right. You write something in here. I think it turned out to be prescient as well as very descriptive, which is that Joe Biden has really actually turned out to be the great unifier. He's got most everyone silently agreeing that he's demented. This is after that speech in Georgia, but shortly after this posted, we saw the Gallup poll on party affiliation, which shows a 14-point swing in the gap on party affiliation. Went from a Democrat +9, which was a record. It was the highest level. It tied for the highest level. The latest match was in 2012, in the fourth quarter of 2012, after Barack Obama's reelection campaign. And it swung all the way to a Republican +5, which is the highest that differential's been since 1995, Andrew. And I mean, that's a 27-point historical mark here. And that's mostly the middle moving away from Biden and the Democrats. And I think you're right. I think that maybe they don't think Biden's demented, but I think that they pretty much everybody's gotten the impression that they bought a pig in a poke when they bought Joe Biden as a unifier.
Yeah, well, 81 million people are wrong. Human nature, they're not going to admit it. I mean, if you watch Twitter, as I unfortunately do too much sometimes, some days, the Biden folks are pretty quiet. When you see, if you read transcripts of some of the things Biden says, you go, wait, what? And this is the president of the United States. And the media is like, oh, writing it down. And you go, no, this is not normal. And that's what I was trying to get at in the column. And I think a lot of people, well, obviously 81 million people read the column, right, Ed?
Absolutely. But, I mean, people hang on your every word. You are the prince. You're the prince.
I know,
Twitter.
Not my family, but the people. It's becoming common sense, conventional wisdom, I guess, that the guy is loopy and he's going to say goofy things. We've always thought, oh, well, he's a gaffmeister and he says bad words on live TV and so on. But now that he's president, it's a big deal, and he's doing it on weighty issues. He's the president of the United States standing up talking about his vice president as President Harris.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why he's done the fewest interviews of any president in modern history, because his handlers know that he's a walking time bomb. He's an IED, a verbal IED, who's going to say something demonstrably damaging at any moment. And even the president says, well, whoever they is, they don't want me to take questions. They tell me to call on this person because those questions have been vetted already. It's kind of, in some ways, without the humor, it's like a Peter Sellers movie. With Peter Sellers as a dictator, and it's just bizarre.
Yep.
And people look at that. They've been bombarded with it. I mean, there's no way that they could, the White House can cover for Biden on everything stupid that he does and says.
Well, we're speaking with Andrew Malcolm, of course, the Prince of Twitter, at @AHMalcolm on Twitter, at RedState.com, talking about his VIP column over at Red State. Andrew, do you think that the speech in Georgia was a unique inflection point in that sense? Do you think that, I would argue that the abandonment of Americans in Afghanistan is one of those unique inflection points. And you see this in the polls, and you see this in this Gallup poll, is that this really started happening in the third quarter. And that was right smack dab in the middle of the third quarter. But do you think that the speech that he gave in Georgia, where he accused opponents of his agenda as being the equivalent of Jefferson Davis and Bull Connor and George Wallace, do you think that that is another unique inflection point, maybe a point where it's sort of like gone beyond the point of all return for Joe Biden at this point?
Yeah, I don't know about the point of all return, because American voters have a chronically short-term memory, but it's damaging and it's bad. It's not that people sat down and watched it in the C-SPAN archive or something. But they hear pieces of it. They know generally what he said. And I don't know who he was addressing. You have to think it was some pocket of far left Looney Tunes people that he was trying to satisfy. Or, I can't believe that he just went off script. He has trouble reading the script as it is, let alone extemporaneously going off in some other direction. It's just so bad and damaging, and, well, as you said, I pointed out in the column, the unifying of people, even people who voted for him or are prepared to give the benefit of the doubt. It's the benefit of the doubt every day, and that piles up. Afghanistan was huge. You and I agree on that, and there's still thousands of Afghan allies and I think 12 or 14,000 Americans left behind that still haven't been evacuated. The media is not calling them out on that. To me, that's absolutely disastrous. Who would help America in another country after that, and after Vietnam, first of all, and leaving so many people behind? Who would ever help us again? And then almost every day there's some new example of strange thinking on his part, if it is thinking, if it's just verbal diarrhea that he's saying. But Georgia was damaging, just totally damaging. And you pointed out that his poll numbers last summer started to fall right after, well, I guess it was the Delta variant started, and then Afghanistan came in and the bottom fell out of his job approval. And it's just, I don't think we've seen the bottom yet.
You actually suggest at least a portion of a speech that Joe Biden could give. And I don't want to give too much away because I want people to go to RedState.com and read this. And I mean, I read this and I was thinking, that is actually, it's not perfect. And I think that he might choke on it a little bit because it's not in his nature.
You would, yeah.
But honestly, I mean, this would actually be a way to return to what I would say temperance. I don't know if you can even get to comity at this point, but it would be a way to return to temperance while still affirming that, hey, this is my position. These vaccines are our best defense, and we need to come together to do this. But I understand. But again, I understand how you feel, and this thing got way too heated. I was too heated. Everybody's been too heated. Let's dial down the temperature. Let's see if we can't move forward together on some common sense principles. I mean, you can apply that to whatever their agenda is going to be for the rest of this year. You can apply that to the Election Count Act, which is probably the one area of voting reform, and I'm going to use that with the scare quotes, Andrew, that is still possible. I just don't think he has it in him. I don't think that Joe Biden ever really did have it in him. I think Joe Biden always thought that once he was in charge, he was the man, and everybody else needed to sit down and shut up. Do you think you can teach this old dog a new trick, or do you think that this is too far gone?
Yeah, I don't know what Delaware voters were thinking for 6 Senate terms. Maybe they get comfortable with the guy. He's never been, as you've pointed out many times, a powerhouse, an intellectual powerhouse, and he's often gone with the wind and so on. And that's, a lot of people are like that when they get to Congress. But he's uniquely unqualified to be a president of all the people. I think he's trying to be president of a tiny fraction of the far left in his party. And what I wanted to suggest in the column was an alternative. I think we're so divided and so partisan that we forget Americans have a very forgiving spirit. They do get angry, and politics are heated, and sports are heated, and so on. But if a leader, or an alleged leader, in Biden's case, sound humble, if they can be self-deprecating, that's a very powerful political tool. I learned that in my almost 10 years inside government politics. If he could come out simply, and I won't go into at great length of what I said, but if he could come out and say, look, none of us knew exactly what was happening when this pandemic struck. And a lot of people made mistakes, and they overpromised. And I was involved in some of those decisions and some of those criticisms. I made a mistake. I'm telling you, I made a mistake now. But we have to come together on this. And I understand some people don't want to take the vaccine. I wish you would, but we're not gonna force it. And just admit that he's made some mistakes, to get back to talking about the country as one, not them and us, which is such a campaign tool. I don't think he could ever get back to square one and be popular in that sense, but he could ease the way and perhaps minimize some of the damage that seems. Nothing's inevitable in American politics, but it seems inevitable that the Democrats are going to take a shellacking come November. At this point, it seems that way. Something can happen. God forbid a 9/11 or something like that can happen, where Americans all come together and they praise the president, and they come together behind him. But they did in 2002. The elections is one of the very few modern times where a president gained seats in the Senate and the House. George W. Bush, after 9/11. So we don't want anything like that. But it's not looking good at the moment for the Democrats come November. And I think if Biden was a smart politician instead of just a survivor and a divider, I think he could at least minimize the damage.
Well, I think that at this point, minimizing the damage is about all that Democrats can hope for. The next topic I want to get into with you, I want to talk just a tiny bit about narrative journalism. We talk about this quite a bit. We had a little instance of it over the past couple of days. Recording this on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, actually. Over the weekend, there was an attack on a terrorist attack on a synagogue in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where the terrorist was holding hostages, a rabbi and some of the congregants at the synagogue, demanding the release of Afia Siddiqui, who is a radical Islamist anti-Semite, and I think that we all kind of figured that, this is probably
a long-term prison term,
serving 86 years. They wanted to the hostage, or the terrorist wanted to force the U.S. to release her. This is the woman that they called Lady Al-Qaeda, for those of you who may not recognize the name Afia Siddiqui. Most of the rest of us were figuring, okay, so he's targeting a synagogue because Siddiqui hates Jews and he hates Jews, and this is clearly a terrorist attack aimed at Jews. And yet the media and the FBI spent hours dancing around the whole, we're not sure what the motive is. We don't know. We don't know if the synagogue was specifically targeted. Of course the synagogue was specifically targeted. I mean, this is insane. If the guy was wearing a red cap, doesn't matter if it had anything on it at all. If the guy was wearing a red cap, the same media outlets would be talking about how Donald Trump is so poisonous that he's inspiring terrorist attacks all over the place. I mean, this is nonsense on stilts, and the FBI had to back down from it when the Brits arrested two of his accomplices in the UK, Andrew. I mean, I was stunned by this coverage, even after all this time.
Well, even the president said, "Wow, we don't know enough to determine the motivation of this attack." What?
Yeah.
This is the disconnect, and I don't know who he's trying to mollify. I hate to think he's just that stupid that he can't really see a motivation. I mean, I understand politicians, and George W. Bush and others did it after 9/11, trying to say, well, this isn't all Muslims. These are radicals. There were only 20 of them or whatever, and not to target Muslims as Muslims, but to target what they did. But this is ridiculous. One guy trying to release a terrorist connected with Al-Qaeda, serving whatever it was, 86 years, and seizing Jews, and we don't know the motivation.
Yeah.
This is something, my grandfather had hardening of the arteries, and he would, nothing talking about terrorism, but he would sometimes say things that were incoherent connections, and nobody contradicted him because everybody knew he wasn't well. But this guy's the president of the United States.
Yeah, this is the same guy, by the way, who made the argument that Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist on the basis of absolutely no evidence whatsoever, right? And has still not retracted that, by the way. Still has not retracted that, even after Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all charges, except for the gun charge. I take that back. The gun charge was dismissed. He's found not guilty on all charges in his trial, and the White House still has not retracted that claim from Joe Biden. So Kyle Rittenhouse, it's easy. You can just assume, and the media went along with this. Oh, Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist. I mean, you can go around and look and find out how many people are calling Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist on the basis of no evidence whatsoever. And it's the same damn outlets that are saying, well, it's just too early to tell what this attack on the synagogue might mean. It's, you know, a whole bunch of chin stroking here, Andrew.
And yeah, chin stroke. And they don't have a beard, not all of them, like you.
Well, that's true.
Wasn't there a problem with that and the Florida student with the Indian at the Lincoln Memorial? I mean, didn't they learn their lesson?
Right, it's Sandman. The Covington Catholic High School kids with Nicholas Sandman. Yeah.
They didn't learn their lesson that you don't jump in and label people. And there was a guy. Was it Brian? Who was the investigative guy for ABC?
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. And I can't think of his name now. It's anyway, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
he got fired because he leaped on the name of some guy in Colorado as being another far right person. In that case, there were consequences, but most of the time there's not. We're just throwing these things around if it happens to be on the right.
Right.
If it's on the left, they were mostly peaceful demonstrations.
Yes. Which brings me to something that you pointed out to me a little earlier today. You sent me an email about this, and I thought it was really fascinating, which is this new platform, Getter, which, to be honest with you, I just haven't had a chance to look at. I deal with so much social media stuff, and I've got, stuff I need to do. It's actually still in beta, but apparently, even though it's in beta, it got almost 1 million views for a Trump rally in Arizona. Is that what happened?
Combined, Getter and the streaming for Newsmax and the others.
Right.
994,000 viewers, showing that they do want an alternative. To my mind, that's really interesting, and Getter's going to blow their own horn about being an alternative that doesn't censor anybody, no matter what they're saying. No matter what their political stance is.
Well, what's interesting about this, of course, is that YouTube and Vimeo. Well, I don't know how much pressure people have been putting on Vimeo, but certainly YouTube and Facebook and Twitter have been exercising more and more editorial control over the speech on their platforms. To the point where it's exclusionary, where you have people who were banned from Twitter for saying basically now what the CDC has been saying is now saying about masks. For instance, it's just one thing. So Getter looks like it is at least trying to position itself as a competitor in that platform that allows for a broader debate. Not easy to do against the big tech, but it certainly looks like Getter has some reach if you look at the numbers on this Trump rally.
And when Joe Rogan joined just a couple of weeks ago, they got like 1 million new followers overnight. It's an interesting phenomenon. I'm not like you. I'm not all that familiar with it yet. I will be, but I remember this is back in 2006. One of the people sitting next to me in the newsroom was telling me about this new thing called Twitter.
Little did you know that you'd be royalty on this new thing.
Yeah. And I remember saying, I don't care what Ashton Kutcher had for breakfast. What an idiot. But that just me, not Kutcher. Mia Kunis, isn't that his wife?
Yes, Mila Kunis is his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, and she and I were friends when she had her baby. We were friends on Twitter and exchanging comments about being famous in modern America, the price they pay. Anyway. So Getter is interesting. It's run by a former Trump aide, and we'll see how it goes. But they certainly are making some splashes early on.
Well, do you think that, and this is really sort of the reason why I bring it up, do you think that this platform and others that might emerge like it are going to force mainstream media outlets to perhaps be mindful of half of their audience not trusting what they have to say, and out looking for alternative methods of gathering information? Or do you think that it's just too much of an insider club right now for that type of thing to have any impact on their actual reporting?
Yeah, I don't know. I was in the mainstream media when it was a different kind of mainstream media for a long, long time. And I have to say that the monopoly mindset and the arrogance that goes with it, they've been chastened somewhat in recent years, but I don't think they're going to change much. No.
To give credit, though, and I'll mention this just to end this in this part of the discussion on a positive note, because we got to get to Andrew's jokes of the day here in just a second. But yeah, that's a feature that is going to continue in the podcasting world. Andrew Malcolm's jokes of the day is going to transfer to the podcast version of the Ed Morrissey Show. But Andrew, I mean, CNN actually did a pretty good job of fact checking Joe Biden's Georgia speech. They ripped him for claiming that he had been arrested as part of his civil rights protests. Jake Tapper really drilled Dick Durbin on whether it was a good idea to call your political opponents racists, and George Wallace and Jefferson Davis. I actually think that there may have been an inflection point there where even CNN's going, MSNBC's a lost cause, but even CNN might be going,
Yeah, well, it gets so bad at some point that they have to, at least in the more blatant cases like this. But day to day, I mean, they can point, for instance, Benghazi. They wanted to get past Benghazi. So I know this is an old story, but it just sticks in my craw. They covered Benghazi. They said what happened, but they dropped it very quickly.
Yeah. It's like Afghanistan now. It's like Afghanistan now. They're not talking about Afghanistan either.
Exactly. It's the same mentality. We move on because it's a bad story for the narrative that we support. And American readers, news consumers, I think, need to be aware, because you think like, oh, well, Afghanistan's quieted down. Well, no, it hasn't. They're hunting down the allies, the interpreters, the aides, the women who taught schoolgirls. They're hunting them down, the Taliban now. And there's no coverage of that. And they wouldn't be able to do it if the president had lived up to his promise that we'll be here as long as it takes to get everyone out who wants to get out. And we didn't. And that's a stain on our national honor.
Yep. And just one more little thing about that, then we'll move on to the jokes. But the difference between how they covered the Kyle Rittenhouse case, we were just talking about this a couple minutes ago, and how they're covering a case in Waukesha, nearby Waukesha. In Kenosha, Kyle Rittenhouse's case was national news. In Waukesha, that massacre, that vehicular massacre in a Christmas parade, is a local story all over again. I mean, nobody's covering this. I mean, it's the narrative journalism is really a cancer on
it is
on reporting. Yeah,
it is, and you're familiar with it. When there's an airplane crash, and then there's another one, and they're both over the news, and then there's another one, and then they all disappear because the news media narrative gets tired of these airplane stories. And so you say, well, why do they always come in threes? They don't. They go on all the time. But the media's attention to them, and that's one of the ways that they censor, is it's not just banning people saying things they don't agree with. It's deciding not to cover something that doesn't fit their narrative. And so you don't know about it. And if you're not online or involved in the news as much as you and I are, you don't know about it. That's how you get misled, misinformed.
Andrew Malcolm, of course, is the Prince of Twitter, and every week he brings us the jokes of the week. Andrew, what are the jokes of the week this week?
Well, these are all old because the late night hosts have been on holiday over the holidays, but so that I call them replays. Conan O'Brien had a replay. Says Kim Kardashian and Kanye West say they will have no more children. Asked why, they said all the really terrible names are taken. I like that. Seth Meyers replay. He says a Montana man was caught on a surveillance camera stealing a 300-pound ATM. He was charged with theft and, worse, a $4 transaction fee.
Yeah, that's the harsh one right there.
That'll get you. So, and then finally, another Conan replay. Ukraine has opened its nuclear meltdown Chernobyl site to tourists. They say it's like going to Disneyland, except the 6-foot mouse is real. Yeah, so the viewership on the late night shows is way, way down, and I understand why. So we grab some of these funnies to just to lighten the news every week when you and I talk.
That's it, and it's a tradition that's going to go right in through the podcast. Andrew Malcolm, thanks for being with us on our inaugural podcast version of the Ed Morrissey Show, and we'll be back every week with Andrew for more on the media and jokes and anything else that happens across our minds. Andrew Malcolm, thanks so much for being with us today.
You bet, Ed. We'll keep it up for another 12 or 14 years. Thanks,
indeed.
Everybody.
This is Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com for Town Hall. Will the 2022 midterms see a red wave that will drive Democrats from control of Congress? A new Gallup analysis of party identification shows Americans have already begun voting with their feet, evidenced most immediately in their party affiliation. In a single year, party affiliation shifted 14 points in the gap from a 9-year Democratic high to a 27-year record for Republican advantage. This confirms that Joe Biden's confidence crisis cascade has seriously damaged Democrats' claims to be a responsible governing party. The hard left turn by Biden and Democrats have pushed voters into the GOP's camp. They have virtually ignored inflation, the supply chain crisis, and pandemic mitigation to pursue their hobby horse radical agendas. Republicans should carefully watch this trend too. This shift took place almost entirely in the middle, as voters got disillusioned by Biden's promises to govern from the center. Voters want to support a responsible governing party, not give free rein to ideological extremes. Misunderstanding this would snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in November and 2024. I'm Ed Morrissey. Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. It is my honor to introduce an exceptional artist, but also just an exceptional American, John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting's lead singer. He's just dropped a new music video, Blood on My Hands. And John, first off, I know that we've covered this in the past, John. You had a video release. It was really your solo performance of Blood on My Hands, which was very powerful, very compelling. This is something different. This is a statement here.
Yeah, I thought we never really made a music video per se. We put out the lyric video, and as you said, people would stream some live performances. But after experiencing kind of the feedback, especially from our veterans, and frankly, Ed, the fact that there was very little commentary from musicians, artists, actors, I wanted to kind of document at least one singer-songwriter's view of what happened, not just with the performance, in front of the White House, but really try to create a piece that kind of spoke to how we got to where we were, where the song kind of fit in. And I was also very grateful to be able to chat with former Vice President Saleh, because I really wanted the last word to be in Afghans, not just some American writer, songwriter, pundit, politician. I really thought the last word should be in Afghans' words. And he was very moving. The two excerpts I used for the video, I think were appropriate. And and state how a lot of folks feel around the world, including here. And I hope that at some point I can share the full interview. I spoke to him for 20 minutes, and it was very powerful and very sad. But I felt it needed to be said, so I put it out.
Well, and again, I think that those last words are very powerful. They're very powerful. And of course, when this goes up, it's going to go up with the video. And if you're watching this, you've already seen the video if you're watching this interview. At least I hope you have. And if not, it's right above you. And you can also go to fightforfighting.com, which I have in the background there. And you can see right now, it says, "Got blood on my hands." That's the link to YouTube. Now, what's interesting about this, you're very upfront about this, is that this very first thing that this video says is this is going to contain some disturbing images. So much so that YouTube isn't really allowing people to embed this. So thank you for putting it on Twitter, which at least does allow the embed. But you can always go to YouTube to watch this. But fightforfighting.com, of course, is the first place that people should go.
Yeah, and I agree with them. It's I'm glad they put the over 18 warning. It's not fun to look at. It wasn't fun to make. Spending two months. I'm on a lot of these signal chains with the evac orbs, and every day we see atrocities, and sometimes you just kind of get numb to them. But I think we had to be honest with what happened and what we did. I wasn't gratuitous. I didn't show faces. It wasn't a mission of mine to embarrass people. I took no kind of clips of the president looking in his watch or falling down the stairs. It wasn't about that. It was really about, here's what happened. And that's why I used news clips, not my words, not any, here's what happened. And then I took select clips from the principals, Milley, Austin, Blinken, to kind of illustrate, frankly, what's the right word? Their failure. And the lack of accountability for it. So I was very careful to do that, to not be gratuitous, but also show the world and show, the folks that maybe have not focused on Afghanistan, the actual costs, the human costs that is happening as we speak, that is not getting better anytime soon. So we did the best we could to be fair, to be diligent, but also speak truth, at least one singer-songwriter's truth.
Indeed. I want to get back to it only being one singer-songwriter, or at least very close to it only being one singer-songwriter at the moment. But I want to also talk about the charity that you're launching, the charity drive that you're launching to help fund efforts, not just for Americans who are trapped in Afghanistan. There's a lot of Americans trapped in Afghanistan. There's 100+ citizens. There are thousands of legal permanent residents who are every bit as American that are still stuck there. According to the State Department's own numbers, it started off at 14,000. They've exfiltrated less than 1,000. At least as of 2 weeks ago, they'd exfiltrated less than 1,000. So we're talking 13,000 or so Americans that are stuck behind Taliban lines, not to mention the tens of thousands of Afghan allies, the millions of women that we sort of promoted as saying, hey, you're liberated now, you can go out and participate in society, and who have now just been betrayed. This is an extensive betrayal. And I know that you're very involved with helping, or at least you're very involved with exfiltration efforts for folks, also with setting up these charitable efforts for Afghans that are stuck there as well. So tell us a little bit about the exfiltration efforts, as much as you can, and what the frustrations are that you're seeing there for both Americans and Afghans.
Yeah, I mean, another reason I wanted to put this video out is because being embedded with Project Exodus Relief and Pineapple and Argo, and just seeing daily the weight that is on these people. They're heroes, right? They're amazing. They're showing us the best of us. But it's been 4 months, and they can't get planes out. And, they're running out of money. So I was hoping not only would this video kind of put a little light back on Afghanistan, but also just let them know, and our Afghan veterans know that, no, it's 2022, but we have not forgot you. This mission continues louder than ever. And yeah, the proceeds of this and my other projects that will be coming, go to an organization called Americans for Afghanistan, which is basically wellness for our troops, Gary Sinise Foundation, Afghan refugee efforts like the National Institute for Music for Afghanistan, and then supporting, these groups, as I mentioned, Pineapple Argo, there's hundreds of them. Project Dynamo, I've gotten to be friends with many of them. And so hopefully this and other efforts can continue to raise funds. Ed, it costs $10,000 to $15,000 to get one person out.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some signs that they may be opening up, and Congress is actually, to their credit, doing some bipartisan work to put some policy together to push for that, to push the State Department to get on the ball. So there is some hope there. But yeah, there's so many needy folks out there. But the least we can do is support these evac heroes who are just doing incredible work. And as you said, it's almost overwhelming to think about. If you just kind of think about 200,000 soldiers, Afghan brothers and sisters we left behind. The women's rights movement. Why every supposed women's rights advocate is not standing on a soapbox now screaming about it, I don't know. Well, I do know, but it's a disgrace. But there's a lot of folks who get it, and a lot of folks on both sides. I think we talked about before. Every single woman senator signed a letter to President Biden saying, "Hey, you got to focus on the women's rights disaster, decimation in Afghanistan." So, hopefully, as we move forward with this thing, it's going to be a marathon. There'll be more and more bipartisan efforts. But this video was not. It was basically, here's what happened, and take it, or hopefully don't leave it.
John, how disappointing. First up, before I even get to that, tell us the URL for where people can go to contribute. I want to make sure that we promote that in this interview. It'll be in the show post as well.
Yeah. Well, you can always go to the individual websites of these orgs, but my little foundation is called What Kind of World Do You Want? You can go to www.whatkindofworlddoyouwant.com, all one word, and that will go to the California Community Foundation, 501c3. I never see the money. It goes straight there, and then all I do is distribute it, and I'll be distributing it to the folks we talked about. So they're a great organization. They're doing a lot of work on their own with Afghanistan. So your money is going to a very safe place, and it will get to the right people, and there will be zero overhead, at least on my side.
And I've already been there. What kind of world do you want.com is the URL. I'll have that in the show post too. So if you're watching this on hot air, you'll see it in the post itself. There'll be a link there. You can go over there. Again, great idea, and John's going to do a great job with that, I know. How disappointing is it though that you are one of the very few voices in the arts, at least, and really in the media in general, national media in general, to be speaking out about this? I mean, there's no coverage of this. The heroes that you're talking about will get mentioned on very rare occasions. I believe that there was I think that there was a Politico story a couple of months ago. National Review has actually been really good at this, and they had Ryan Mill had a great article on this. And just, kudos to Ryan for doing such a great job on this. I don't want to leave him out. He's one of the great exceptions to this, and National Review too. But hardly anybody else is talking about this. We got Americans behind Taliban lines, and nobody wants to talk about this. Why, and how frustrating is that for you?
Yeah, it's one of the great depressing realities of this whole debacle. It's not just our military failure, the political operation. The media was good early, I thought. I thought they were good. But as soon as our last soldier left, it seems like they got the memo from the White House that, well, this is over now. Now, as you said, there are some folks doing great work. Wall Street Journal had a great piece out a couple of weeks ago about the 60,000 interpreters. Even folks like the Washington Post will do some articles on these folks. I did actually, I sent a little tweet the other day asking, where are all the artists and musicians? And somebody sent me an article from the UK where there were a bunch of actors, Cumberbatch, some iconic, who basically sent out a letter saying, hey, our fellow artists are being not only losing their careers or unable to practice their craft, are being hunted. So there are some. I think part of it, Ed, is a lot of the folks are not even aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, most of the artistic community watch certain channels that really don't even talk about Afghanistan. So I have a feeling many of them are just not aware. And if they were made aware, that maybe they would stand up and lend their voice. And it matters. People say, well, why does it matter? It's the Taliban. Well, I'll tell you why it matters. When we had the children's orchestra, there were still half of them trapped in Afghanistan. We got half of them in Portugal. There was a lot of press on those kids. And you know what? The Taliban does not want bad press. They don't want, they want their $10 billion. They're committing atrocities every day, but they are a little bit savvy about press. So when all those articles about those kids going, hey, you better not touch those kids, we want to get them out, we got them out. And part of that was because there is a focus. And one of my mentions in my tweet today about this video is, what about the lesbian gay community? They are being hunted. I was just talking to a guy running evacs the other day who has many lesbian and gay folks on his list. Some have been killed, some they've gotten out, some are in safe houses. So where is the advocates for them in this progressive world? So I think part of it is let people know what's happening, and I'm doing that, and I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt. But also, as we know, part of it too is just pure tribalism, that if it was a Republican president, they would be screaming from the mountaintops, there'd be a counter on CNN and that world. But we just can't use that as an excuse. We have to power through that and find allies. And there are, as I said, on the Hill, we're seeing that from Democrats and Republicans. But yeah, the fact there's been no, shout out from the music industry or the music periodicals and the Rolling Stones of the world, for the most part, is really a disgrace. And there should be a Sun City, there should be a Live Aid, there should be tons of songs of mine like that. And there's not. And I think that speaks to our culture, and it speaks to the shallowness of our artistic community. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. We talked about this when you first released Blood on My Hands. And this follows a great tradition of protest music, of defending the weak and innocent through the arts. It's a great tradition. It used to be a celebrated tradition. I mean, I can't tell you how many movies I sat through about the 1960s, and I mean, the Big Chill was only one of those. It was a very good movie, but I mean, what did they say? Oh, well, it was so great back then because we were doing all these things, and we got to go back to doing these things. Here you've got the perfect opportunity to do it. It shouldn't really even be a partisan issue. Shouldn't be. And yet nobody seems to want to take this up. I find that at least disappointing, and I'm certain that you do as well.
No, as I said, it just adds to the shame. Not only did our nation do this, for the most part, our media has ignored it or shunned it. And the artistic community, who's supposed to be the voice of compassion, freedom of expression, women, children, minorities, lesbian, gay community, they have abandoned ship. And again, it just speaks to the malignancy of the tribalism of our nation, and it exists on both sides. But you can either whine about it, or you can make videos like this and try to recruit allies. And hopefully, more and more from the music community will step up with some of the other projects we got coming that are not quite as, should I say, to the point as this video.
Indeed. And John, I want to thank you again for taking the time out here on the release day. I know that you're a busy guy. You've just come back from being on tour, for one thing. I'm sure you're trying to recharge the batteries here to some extent. Hopefully I know that we're going to try to get together with Dwayne Patterson and the Universe this week to talk more about this. And, we'll just keep an eye out for what's going on later on, and hopefully we get a chance to have you back soon and talk more about this as well as some other more pleasant things.
Yeah, we'll have some more inspiring things coming, but we had to lay this out for the record. And thank you, Ed. Happy New Year to you and your family, and to all your hot Aryans out there. Happy New Year.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much for being with us.
All right, buddy.